So I am probably going to break this video into 3 parts. I went to a MAGA rally today, so right now I will be talking about what I remember of it like being there and what happened. And then later on, probably not tonight, maybe tomorrow, I will look at the footage that I took and maybe look a little bit about what the news says about when I was there in the aftermath. And then I will make a third video or several videos where I post some of the footage that I took while I was there. So, I went today with my husband. We got let off from work early. I went today with my husband to go and see a something called the Global Frontline Summit for what was it? The Global Frontline Nurses Summit, and it was supposed to be a some sort of conference meeting rally thing about medical freedom and about COVID and about the COVID vaccine and so on. But it happens to be located near the MAGA rally, and while looking for it, my husband and I found the MAGA rally and started to kind of like wade through it, mostly just while looking for the other event. And then eventually we found the place where we thought it was supposed to be and no one was there. So we ended up just going back to the Trump rally after all. But when we first got there, so we started approaching, and okay, so about half a mile away from the rally, we parked our car and we started to walk towards the rally, and then we kept running into several streets that were blocked by police cars, and the officers wouldn't let anybody pass. So we eventually came upon the Trump rally, and we could like hear chanting from across a field and across the street. And so I decided to start filming. When we got closer, there were a lot of people chanting. There wasn't really any violence, at least not that we saw. We were at the front of the building for a while, and it was just people holding signs, some people yelling. There were a lot of people that were filming on their phone, which was really cool. I thought it was really amusing and fun to see other people like holding their phones, walking around filming stuff. There were a couple of people with bullhorns. There was one guy who had like a poster or something like that he rolled up into a bullhorn and was shouting. There was one guy who approached us crouching around and looking at us strangely. It was kind of weird. And my husband thinks that he was on drugs. I got vibes that he might have been autistic, but we can't know. So we ended up kind of like running into a few people, not that we knew, but that we ended up like talking to. And a lot of them had really interesting stories to tell about things that had gone on earlier. So there was this guy that we ran into who was showing people, I don't know whether he knew them or not, I don't think he knew them, but he was showing them a picture on his phone, and they all gathered around, so we got closer to see what was going on. And he showed us his phone, and there was like a picture on there of a guy who was holding a wine bottle, and he's like, oh yeah, like a bunch of us, here's where we snuck in. I didn't get to see where he was referencing on his phone. But he's like, here's where we snuck in, and a bunch of us went into Nancy Pelosi's office, and this guy stole a bottle of wine. And he said, and I took her phone, and then he like reaches in his pocket and pulls out like a plastic beige phone receiver. Yeah, so I heard a little bit about how after the fact that there was looting, they were mentioning that in the media, which was accurate from what I saw there personally. So we kept looking for our event. We ended up going to the side of the building, the side of the Capitol at one point, and we could see that there were a lot more people behind it, but we didn't get closer. We didn't end up going there. In case people are wondering if there was violence or not, if there was any, so we went from between the hours of like 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. So we didn't see any violence at all, but that was at the front of the building, first of all, and then it was only between those 2 hours. So who knows what happens before or after or what was going on behind the building. But it was peaceful where we went. There were a lot of angry people who were shouting stuff, but that was it. So there were snipers on the roof, and there were police cars, fire trucks, ambulances all around. And there was one woman who was pointing her phone at the windows, and she was yelling about, apparently the congressmen were like inside the building watching from out their windows. At one point after my husband and I got tired of trying to find the other thing we were supposed to do. Oh, so apparently, we ran into some people, they were walking past us and they'd mentioned the name Del Bigtree, who is, a medical freedom advocate who was like the one, who was at the event that we were looking for. And my husband caught that and told me, and so we stopped them and asked them what was going on. Apparently the place where it was originally located someone had left like a package and a bomb threat was called in, and that's why all the streets were blocked off. And we had a little bit of trouble finding the new location. So anyways, my husband and I decided that we wanted to get like closer. So all the way up the, you have like the doors, and then you have the steps that go up the door here. You have like the steps that go up, and then the doors over here. So the whole like staircase and balcony area was crowded with people, and we decided we wanted to go up there. So we started to go up, and we found near the top. Well, they would shoot tear gas out the door occasionally. And, I'm sorry, I need to rewind a little bit first. When we started to walk up there, before we actually reached it, I heard a guy say something like they shot her. So I stopped and listened to what he was saying, and he was saying, like, they shot her, she was on the ground, she looked like she was dead, and he started crying, and, so he started crying, and everyone started to, like, in the little group that was sort of listening to him, it was interesting how little groups would form, like whether people knew each other or not. If someone had something interesting to say or show on their phone or whatever about what was going on, like a little group of, I don't know, like 5 to 10 people around them would kind of form and listen and look. But this group, they stood around him and started to pray with him. And I asked him a little more what happened. So several people had broken into the Capitol. They'd gotten into the building, and they were, what was it? So this guy said that he got some footage, some video footage that was not her getting shot, but it was like the events immediately surrounding her getting shot. And he said, like, my phone is at 1% to this one lady. He's like, my phone is at 1%, but I'll send it to you, and then you can send it to anyone else who wants it. So I gave the lady my phone number, and when the guy charges his stuff, and whenever he's ready, he'll send that to her, and then she supposedly will send that to me. And if I get some of that footage, I'll share it on my channel. But he said basically that allegedly there were gunshots, that the protesters were firing, and that that the protesters were firing and that the police shot back. But he's like, we didn't shoot, nobody was carrying a gun, like, so they just shot her, and then I don't know if she was dead, but she was lying on the ground and she looked like she was dead. But he cried, we prayed around him. He was, he said that he was Jewish, but he had like a South African accent, and he was like, he kind of had some black features, but he was sort of pale, and he had freckles. And I mentioned this because at one point he told us, he said, be mindful that there are Antifa and Black Lives Matter all around you. I don't remember if he said Antifa, but he said, be careful because there's BLM all around here. And he looked at us seriously and he said, don't be afraid, but be mindful. And he said something about like watching your emotions and not letting your emotions affect how you act, which I agree with very strongly. So anyways, he then walked off, and my husband and I started to get closer to the building in the staircase, and it was really crowded. It took us a bit of time to kind of squeeze past all the individuals, and there were two like big black trucks on either side, and one of them had people standing on it. But we passed a bunch of people with signs, people who were filming, some people who were shouting, people were chanting a lot. Usually they were chanting USA, but sometimes they were chanting Stop the Steal. And then there were the occasional person who was shouting out liar, thieves, that kind of thing. But we got closer up the stairs, and I got distracted by someone who looked a lot like, if you've ever heard of the YouTube channel that got deleted, Edge of Wonder, although they have their own website now, one of the hosts' name is Rob. And there was this guy who was, it looked like filming an interview because he was sitting on a step with like the selfie cam on, and there was a guy next to him just talking, like not really a conversation, it was just him talking and they were filming. So I didn't want to interrupt. I don't know if it was him or not. My husband said it wasn't him, but he's never seen him. I don't know, because Rob has been around the DC area before for some kind of protest or rally or event. Anyways, so we started to get up the stairs, and before we were on the top platform, somebody was like, oh, like there's gas, move down. So we started to kind of turn around and move down the steps, and I coughed. Hang on a second. Cats were causing trouble. Anyways, so tear gas, coughing, a little bit of tearing up and a runny nose. It wasn't too bad though, and everyone kind of like quickly backed up to the everyone quickly moved back to the place that they had moved away from. They filled in the gap. When we were up there, my husband and I saw on the ground that there was a smashed wine bottle with like wine everywhere, and we got like 2 pieces of it to keep as a souvenir because we thought it might have been Nancy Pelosi's like stolen wine bottle. We thought maybe the guy who stole it had like dropped it and smashed it. And I don't advocate stealing at all, but it just seemed kind of cool, the idea of like having a piece of an object that came from someone who was prominent and well known and that I've seen on TV. It was like kind of surreal, so we kept 2 of the pieces from the wine bottle. At one point when we were up there was this guy who was talking about the girl who'd been shot, and he was saying that he had apparently, I believe, it was a little hard to get the story straight because there was a lot going on, and I asked him some questions to clarify as best I could. But it seemed like he was saying that he had heard from other people that she was shot in the head or shot in the neck, and that he himself, along with others, had seen her get, like when they were outside, saw her on a stretcher with her neck bleeding, getting put into an ambulance. And I put up my phone and I started to film him. I was like, well, okay, could you repeat what you said again? And I didn't mind like filming people's faces because my thought was just, I won't put it on the internet without their permission. I'll keep it for personal use. But I asked him to tell his story again, and he got really animated, and he started off with like, the feds are lying, or something like that. And he was telling the story again, but it was it was just like, oh, like a girl was shot and the feds are lying, and like a woman's dead now because they killed her. So I had to ask him like again to kind of try and get him to say to the camera what the full story was. And he was speaking directly to the camera, and he was really animated. And I thought it was really interesting because my mindset had, like, I'd kind of assumed that people who, assuming that someone feels angry about something, you can have people who are angry and they get really animated and dramatic about it, and then people who are angry but they kind of stay like calm and speak very, very rationally and thoughtfully. And it was interesting because it seemed like he wasn't one or the other. When he was speaking to us, it was calmly, it was just matter of factly, it was, this is what I saw, this is what happened, like. And then when he was telling it to the camera, it was almost like an act, kind of. And he was saying, he wasn't really saying any new information or contradicting information. It was just very theatrical and very pumped and very angry, as opposed to before when he was just stating what he knew. So I thought that was a very interesting contrast, and it surprised me. But I asked him if I had his permission to put it on the internet. He's like, yeah, spread it around, like share this, people need to see this. So that is one of the videos I'll be uploading. There are several videos that I would like to upload, but whether or not I do is dependent on if I can figure out how to blur faces. One, because I'm editing on my phone, and two, because I'm very new to making videos. I may not be able to figure it out in a timely manner, and I may just not do it. Hopefully I'll figure that out though, because there are definitely like I got just a little bit, about maybe 30 seconds or so, of the guy who was crying, who like saw her when she went down. You know, I'd like to be able to put that up, but I don't want to show his face because he seemed like a really nice guy. I want to keep his privacy. So there was, what's it called? So there was that, and then they gassed us some more, but it didn't really bother my husband and I after a little while. We didn't move too much. We moved some to get out of the way so that the people who were closer could move away. But aside from making space, we didn't really we didn't really leave so much for our sake. And we were just there to watch. We didn't want to cause trouble. One person like tried to throw, I think they tried to throw a water bottle in the doorway, but it like hit the arch of the door and kind of like bounced down. I knocked over my makeup, but it like bounced down and hit the floor. But that was like the most violent thing that I'd seen personally. And yeah, so at one point somebody came from towards the front of the door, and my husband and I were still on the platform, but somebody started walking through and they were like, make a hole, and they start pushing people off to the side to make like a pathway. And then this police officer comes through who's wearing a MAGA hat, and he's black, and he high-fived a couple people. And then I think there was like one other one that came through wearing not necessarily a MAGA hat, but wearing something that showed he was a Trump supporter. And then a bunch of other like cops filed through, and I'm not sure what was going on, if they were crouching or what, because there were a couple people in front of me. All I could see was their heads, but they all seemed really short. It was like they were a little line of like midget cops or something. And they had like helmets, and if I remember correctly, they had their hands like on the shoulders of the person in front of them. So then we had to go back to pick up our child from daycare. So when we started heading back down the stairs, I was like filming the whole time at that point, but there was a huge gap in my filming because I realized I was at 12% battery. But I was like, we're going home, it's okay, and you know, my husband's got GPS on his phone, so it's not that big a deal. So I start kind of filming again, and as I'm filming, my husband's like, hey, get this, and I was like, what are you talking about? And he taps this guy on the shoulder, or like pats him on the shoulder so that he'll turn around, and there's this guy, and he's holding a wine bottle, and my husband is like, is that the wine bottle? And he was like, yeah, this is the wine bottle. And it said Democrats on it. I don't know if that's like a special kind of wine, like a specially ordered wine, or if that's just an actual brand out there, but I'm gonna look it up and I'm gonna get myself a bottle. Um, but so uh, my husband and I talk with him a little bit, and then I ask him like, "Hey, like, did you know the guy that stole the phone receiver?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "Okay, well, I got a picture, or he got a picture of you, and there was this other guy who stole her phone receiver." Um, and he we told him about the wine glass bottle that was broken and showed him the pieces we had, which we'd been showing to a lot of people. We kept showing people the pieces, like, just like, hey, we found this, we think it's Nancy Pelosi's wine bottle, and we tell them the story. But we found him, and I was like, okay, well, there, that settles it. My husband and I were about to be living on a lie here with our little fake, like, our fake relics is what my husband called it. Um, so, but we decided to keep them anyway, just as a souvenir. But I was like, at least we know. And honestly, my impulse was like to get the bottle from him. I just, again, like, because it was something that was owned by effectively a celebrity, and it was a really cool idea. If I had had money on me, I would have offered to purchase it from him just because of the idea of it. Um, so, anyways, we start leaving. We Some of the things that were interesting, just like not big stories, but just little interesting things that were noteworthy, is the way that everyone was filming. We saw like several different camera crews that were around. Um, there was one point where everyone started singing the Star Spangled Banner, and I got like the last half of it on film. Um, that was actually really cool. And there was a woman with a microphone at like somewhere farther back, like way behind. There was bleachers and a bunch of people standing on them, and they were passing around a microphone, and there was one woman who was praying um, to, I think, Jesus, about how she wanted there to not be violence. She was praying that Jesus would prevent violence. I'm not sure if she in particular was necessarily a Trump supporter or not, but a lot of the people around her were wearing like Trump gear. People were carrying like Trump flags, and on the back of the bleachers, we saw it from behind at a different point in time. It was like a Trump 2020 sign or something like that. A lot of people had signs that said "Stop the Steal." There was some sign about like an audit thing or whatever. Um, at one point, we saw a Pepe the Frog sign, and one guy had a Pepe the Frog mask. Um, what else was there? I think one of the biggest, most notable things about it was that it felt so exciting to be in something like that in person, because it's like normally that's a thing that happens on TV, but to go there and have that happen in real life, and to be able to hear people like shouting and chanting, and seeing people walking around with signs, was like very, I don't know how to explain it. It was just very exciting to be able to see something like that happening in real life and not just on a screen, and to note how real it was. And there was like an energy to it. Just all those like pumped people around each other for like the same cause, more or less. I mean, I'm sure they all had slightly different agendas. I mean, there were some people that were yelling and calling Congress people cowards and liars and thieves, and then there were other people who were just really chill and laid back and didn't really cause a scene at all. Um, so I'm sure they'll get huge variation in personalities. There were definitely a lot of people there that I felt very off put by. As someone who generally likes Trump as a president, not that I'm a Trump fan and he's made a lot of mistakes, but I don't think that he's all that bad of a president, not compared to any president in general. But there were a lot of people there who made me really uneasy with the way that they were shouting, and I didn't think they were going to get violent. It's just that they struck me as very close-minded and overly emotional, and I felt a little uneasy around that, and I felt slightly embarrassed that I might be associated with one of them. And I imagine that there were other people there who were like that as well. Like, again, to point to that South African guy, it was like, he said, be mindful. Don't be afraid. Don't let your emotions control your actions, but be mindful. So, yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. And I can't tell if it was surreal or if it was very strangely normally real. Like if you ever had something happen that you thought was gonna feel incredible, like because it was, I don't know, something you've only seen on TV, and then it happens in real life, and you're like, wow, that was really normal. Like, I don't feel anything special at all. It is what it is. Um, but I was like really excited the whole time, and I kept telling my husband like how awesome this was and how happy I was, and yeah, so that's all that I can remember at the moment. I'll probably add follow-ups if I remember more when I go over the video footage, and then I'll post as much video footage. Well, I guess not as much as I can, because there's a lot that I'm gonna have to edit out. Just my husband and I talking about our personal lives, like, and kind of indicating just personal information that we don't want on the internet quite at this point. So, there's a lot that I don't want to have to deal with editing through as someone who's not very familiar with this stuff, but some of the shorter clips and more interesting clips I'll probably post. Like, I'll see if I can maybe post the Star Spangled Banner thing, or the lady who was praying. If I can blur out the faces, I'll show you the guy who stole the wine bottle, or the guy who, like, saw the woman on the floor. And then I'll definitely show you, because this one won't require any editing at all. He gave me permission to put them on the internet. I'll just put his video up. He said he wanted to share it too, so yeah, you guys can share it. So that is all that I have, I guess, for this video. Then, the next item on my agenda is to review my video footage and just to kind of look at what the news is saying, and then to give my afterthoughts and see if I remember anything after the fact. So that'll be my next video. And then after that, I'll post whatever footage I decide to post. So, yeah, I hope you guys found this interesting and informative. And if you found it useful, please share it. I'm not here because I'm trying to get subscribers. I'm here because I'm trying to help the collective and myself to pursue the deeper truths in life, and even the shallower truths in life. So, if you're interested in, listening to someone's unique perspective and maybe contributing a little bit, then feel free to subscribe. Anyways, thank you for watching.